Hello, welcome. Tonight I am going to do a quick tutorial of the Korg microKORG. And just so you don't stick around, if you're hoping to learn about how the Vocoder works, I am not going to cover the Vocoder. This is just going to be a tutorial on, how to edit synthesizer sounds and basic usage of this thing. So if you're looking for a vocoder tutorial, check elsewhere, or I will try to get to it. I'm going to make February kind of microKORG month. At least that's what I've been doing for most of February so far. You haven't seen any videos on it until now, but I've been playing around a bit in the background, preparing to make some videos about it. So I've done one video in the past about this, and it's when I first bought it, and I did a quick kind of how-to guide. I'm probably going to go over that again. If you watch that guide, you might have got a chuckle when I called the resonance tab, or dial, the Renaissance. So I've learned a bit over the last year of owning this thing, and just my own opinion so far. When I bought this thing, I was hoping to gel with it immediately, and it just didn't happen. Well, when you're calling things the Renaissance style and it's menu driven, not dial driven, you actually have to have a good understanding, not a good understanding, but an understanding of what all this is. You can see how a noob could easily get lost in it. So what I want to make tonight is the video I wish I had a year ago, because at least I couldn't find something that's going to go over everything I'm going to go over tonight. There's bits and pieces of it probably out there, but I just, I really like Cuckoo's videos, or even some of the other videos that just go over how these things work all in one shot. Anyway, enough of me gabbing about my own experience. Let's get into it. So the first thing, we're going to go over the basic functionality. Then we're going to go through all the menu options. And then once we've covered that, we're going to go over making maybe some sample sounds to see what this thing can do. Okay. So let's just start with the basic options. Like if you just got this out of the box and you're just wanting to play around. All right, up here is the patch basically, or sound selector. It has up to 88 patches on each bank. So there's an A bank and there's a B bank. And to switch between the banks, this is your buddy here. And you can see I put stickers over top of these. It was just because before it says stuff like techno, and like here, for example, we got hip hop under this one. I rather have what the actual sound types are. So these are, you can see they're nice little calendar stickers that will come off easy, but are nice to have there for my own my own benefit. I haven't actually programmed these all full yet, now that I'm actually understanding how to do so. I'll probably get into that. And that's one nice thing about this thing that I like. It runs on batteries, so I got it plugged into batteries right now. You can also get a wall wart for it, and you can also get those rip cords. I made a video on those. In fact, I tried my stupid Volca sample one. Even though that's one of the reasons I said check the polarity on those rip cords if you got them, because the Volca sample and the microKORG had reverse polarity. Thankfully, I didn't fry it by doing that, but I couldn't charge it with my ripcord. Anyways, enough of my own stuff. Okay, so we've gone through how to switch through the patches. And so if you want to get through 74, you just use these guys down here for the program number. It's a nice little bass patch I put together the other night. Why don't we let that fly while we go through some of the other functionality on this thing. All right, so we've gone through how to select the patch. Now this won't work right now. Let me push pause for a quick second on this loop. That's a MIDI data coming in from my computer into the microKORG for the MIDI in on the back. But okay, that's how you play. Hopefully you know that. But if you want to shift the octave down, you got this octave shift. It's pretty growly. And you have your pitch and mod wheels. Cool. So let's go and play the MIDI loop, because it's a much better keyboardist than I am, and I can actually concentrate when I explain things. So the mod wheel won't work on the MIDI. And the MIDI is also correcting the pitch. So those won't work if I'm playing MIDI in. But what will work Okay, so if you don't want to get into the menus to edit sounds, if you just buy this to be a preset machine, you either buy somebody else's presets or use the presets on board. You have 5 major controls at your hand right here. So beyond the pitch and mod, if you're playing freehand, not getting a MIDI track coming in, you have cutoff, resonance, not renaissance, the envelope attack, and the envelope release, and the tempo. So let's go over the cutoff. It's for the filter, so it's going to adjust the cutoff on the filter. And you can do your filter sweeps with that easily. Let's dial it back down a little bit. And the resonance. I almost said renaissance again. And what it does is I don't quite get it. It kind of just changes how the filter sounds. Like the one nice thing on the Digitone, the Electron devices, is you can actually adjust the resonance and see how it kind of makes the it goes from a nice rounded kind of filter to a sharp cutoff. So let's just hear what it sounds like. So maybe that's where it's starting to get a little sharper. And then, so I don't have a nice screen here showing me what it's actually doing to the filter, but you can kind of figure that out in your own head. Let's dial it back to a nice spot. And the attack, well, that's going to be the attack on the envelope. So if we dial this up, you can hear how the attack's taking a while to ramp up, and because this is a bass line, it's not very useful. But if it's a lead or some other type of sound, you can easily adjust the envelope attack for your loudness. And the same for the release. Once again, not too handy with this sound we're using right now and the way we're using it, but you can see how it could be. Now the tempo is interesting. So you're going, tempo is going to control the arpegulator. Oh god, the arp. That's one I haven't figured out how to pronounce yet. Is that damn bastard? But the tempo is going to affect how fast that's kicking through. So you can see the tempo light here is flashing. So this will let you control that, but sometimes if the LFOs are set to the tempo, it's going to make your LFOs go crazy or slow them down. But let's turn this off for a sec so I can show you the ARP. That's how I'll reference it to the rest of this video, because I screwed that up already. All right, let's drop this down to an actual bass sound again. So there you go, you get that. Now, there's other quick, handy controls you have for the ARP as well. We need to go dial this guy down here to the ARP, and as soon as I get into either of these ARP settings on this guy here, see how all these guys light up? So you can disable the ARP triggering on notes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 8 note ARP you got available here. It's gonna bug you guys every time I say ARP now, isn't it? All right, so I've given you enough to get going as if you're just gonna use this as a preset machine. What if you actually want to do sound design on it? So that's what we're gonna dive into now, is modifying the patches or sounds on this using the tools you have available. Okay. So first things first, there's 2 ways to attack sound design. Is you can either take the presets that are on here and modify them to your liking, or if you're like me, you can start with the raw sound. So this is, you got this going on right now. So if you want to get rid of that, just have the raw sound or the initialized sound from scratch. Hold down shift and push 3, which brings up the initialize option. Hit 3 again, and it will reset the sound to be the basic microKORG sound. Okay, so If we want to save over top of a patch, we hit right. But you're saying, oh, what does PCT mean? It means write protect's on. We have to turn that off before we can actually save any sounds we're designing over top of the existing patches. And you got to do this every time you turn it on if you're going to be writing over patches. Push Shift 8, write protect menu, cut off. And you can see it's flashing on. You're going, hey, how come I can't turn this to off? What's going on? Well, the way these pots work, you actually have to crank them. So the way there's two options on this one, either off or on. I got to bring the pot over to the on side. It stops flashing. And then once I get to what the actual original setting is, I can move it down to off. Another quick way to quickly adjust these, if it's a quick setting like that, is if you push Shift down or up. Oops, it doesn't work in the write protect menu. That's going to work elsewhere. Sorry. We'll get into that in another second. That does not work in the write protect menu, but let's see if write protect is now off. If we try to write over that sound again. Oh, I really screwed it up. So let's try it again. Shift 8, write protect. Let's turn it off, save it, write, done. So now it's written. And if we go to another sound, go back here. So we got rid of that preset and replaced it with just a default Korg sound, microKORG sound. All right. Let's start diving into these menus and through this Excel spreadsheet. So if you look at this handy-duty spreadsheet you got on the side here, you'll see on the most left-hand side here is all the various menu items that you have on these dials here, all the dials on 1 here, and all the dials on dial 2 here. And so voice, pitch, oscillator settings, the mixer, the filter, the volume filter, the filter envelope, the amp or volume, and amp envelope or volume envelope, and LFO 1 and 2. And then under each knob for these sections, it will show you in white what this knob controls for synth patch, and in green what the knob controls for a vocoder patch. And so let's start with voice here. So for example, voice, if I start twisting this knob around, I look here for voice, and I can see here under this knob, I'm either setting the patch to be a synth patch or a vocoder patch. So in this case, I'm not going to get into vocoders. I might do that in a future tutorial. We'll see. But for tonight, we're taking a look at the synth stuff, so I'm going to leave it just as a synth patch. This guy here under the voice menu is going to let me say if is it a single or a layer patch. Now, what does that mean? Single was what it sets right now, but as soon as I set to a layer patch, you'll see the timbre light sets up. So one of the cool things about this synth is you can make multi-timbre sounds, and what that means is you can basically combine two patches, two different patch sounds into one patch. So, for example, I'll do a quick little example on sound 1, let's just select, and we're jumping ahead a little bit here. Let's just set it to be, a triangle wave. And then on sound 2, let's set it to be noise, just to make it quite different. And let's go to, I'm not hearing any noise, so I think I got to dial in some noise, or we're not going to hear any of it. There we go. And don't worry, we'll jump into this a bit. So you can see how you can quickly mix two different kind of patches together. We'll probably play around with a multi-timbre or the layered patches when we do some specific sounds that we'll try to design after we go through these menus. But for the tutorial for now is to not get things too complicated. We're going to go back to voice, and we're going to set this back to be just a single layer where we'll just hear, I think it's the triangle wave for now. Cool. So that's under the voice menu. Single layer lets you tell if it's just going to be quite a simple single layer, or if you're going to put two layers or two timbres into your patch. All right, the voice assign. So with the microKORG, you can either assign up to 4 notes, poly, or 4 voices for the poly setting, or you can set it to be mono, which just lets you do 1 note, 1 voice. Or you can set it to unison, where you get all 4 voices on the 1 note you're holding down. All right, we'll keep it in unison mode for now because it's going to help us with these other switches, pots, or in this menu. So trigger mode. So this is interesting. So you can either have single or multi. So what single does is when you with single, basically the envelopes or the LFO won't be re-triggered when you push down a second note. So, and you're not going to hear this. And this is the one thing that drives me crazy, and that drives I think a lot of people crazy about this synth is it's not a knob per function synth. So, for example, to make this demonstration work, I gotta go to the volume envelope or the amp EG settings on here and add a bit of an attack. And what the attack's going to do is, for example, if you don't know what an attack on a volume envelope does, you can hear, as soon as I push the key down, you're going to hear a sound. Now, if I add a bit of an attack, it's going to take a little bit for it to ramp up. So if you've never seen a ADSR envelope attack, decay, sustain, and release, put right there is where you're pushing the note on, and so the longer attack it takes to ramp up to the full sound, the decay will bring it down to the sustain level. So and then the release, yeah, whatever. Terrible explanation, but it's easier to actually look at examples than hear me yell about it. Sorry about that. Anyways, so we've added a bit of an attack now. Okay, so you can hear the attack. So let's go back to our voice and where we're explaining the trigger mode between single and multi. So single, as soon as I push down the first key, so any keys I push down after that, it's not re-triggering that that volume envelope or the LFOs. You can't hear the LFOs yet because we don't have them really configured to do any modifications to our sound yet. But if I put it on multi, every time I push a key down, it doesn't matter if I were holding one down, it's going to re-trigger those envelopes. Now back to single, multi. See the difference? So that's what this trigger mode does. We'll leave it just as single for the time being. And then the unison detune. So basically, it's going to detune all those unison voices. So right, if it's dialed into 0, all the 4 voices are going to be completely tuned the same, and you're not going to hear any detune. And you can see as I crank it up, they get all wobbly and detuned from each other. And there you go. So that's how that's what the unison detune does. Now it's interesting to note that if I put it into mono or poly and I try to adjust this, you see how I get that ... Well, that means that option is not available to me because I'm not in unison mode. So that's why I kept it in unison mode before. Maybe we'll leave it in poly mode just for fun now. Okay, so that's the voice settings. Let's take a look at pitch. Pitch is a little bit more simpler than the voice settings we just went through. So we're on page 17 of the manual here if you're following along at home. All right, what do we got under pitch? Under here, we can do the transpose. So when you're playing, you can basically transpose the sound 2 octaves down or 2 octaves up. So for example, I can use this to switch the octaves. So here we're at just as is now, but if I drop this down 2 octaves, that's what we get, right? So let's say we want that to kind of be just like where we are without having to push the down button twice. We just crank this down. And we're already there. And vice versa for the other way around. So that's how you can quickly transpose your sound. The tuning is it's not as significant as the transpose, but it lets you just, get that last little alignment to whatever you want it to sound like. Might be handy if you're playing with other instruments and you're a little bit out of tune with them to goof around with those to get it dialed in. But that's what they can do. Now hopefully I don't screw this up, but this guy here is the portamento, which is also known as glide. So right now there is no glide. So if I go from here, and maybe we'll go back to, we'll stay in unison because that's going to be a better demonstration of the glide, or try my luck here, portamento. Okay. So you can hear there's no glide whatsoever, but as soon as I dial in some glide, so you can control the glide and how it affects your sound with that one there. And that's what else we had? We had the bend range. So we had the bend range and the vibrato intensity. So the bend range. So right now, if I take my sound and I pitch it around, so it's set to 2. So if I set this all the way to 0, you notice the pitch wheel there's nothing. So depending on how I have this configured, it's going to affect how significant the pitch rate, this pitch wheel affects the sound when used. So, you know, that's maxed out, where before it was set to 2. So let's set it back to 2 and hear what that sounds like now. You know, not quite a crazy pitch intensity. So you can adjust how much the pitch wheel affects the pitch when used with this setting here. And once again, we are in the pitch menu, and that is the bend range. So we'll set it back to 2 for now, just for fun. And for the mod wheel, what do we have it set to right now? 5. So let's set to the 0, and you'll see once again the mod wheel won't do anything. But as soon as we start, you know, adjusting this, you can adjust how the mod wheel is going to react. And now it's set to 0, but we'll throw a little bit in there just for fun if we want to play with the mod wheel later. Cool. So that's the pitch settings. Now, oscillator 1 is one of the more complicated menus, and that's just because of the range of options you have in. So first of all, you can switch between all the different oscillator waveforms you have. So you have, this one is saw, this one is square, this one is triangle, that's a sine wave, that's Vox, that's a digital waveform, or what is the actual official name here on page 20? Digital waveform generator system. Sounds very fancy. And then we have noise. Okay. Now, why? That's not too complicated, so that's how you switch between all the waves. What is a little complicated in this menu, and what page 18 to 19 will walk you through if you want to read through this yourself, is you have 2 controls for each of these LFOs. Now, for most of them, so for example, for the saw, and for the triangle, and for the Vox, control 1 is going to set, so it's going to set, and maybe I'll show you a picture. So for those guys, control 1 is going to modify basically the waveform. So you can see, for example, here is for the triangle, if it's set to 0, that's what your triangle wave is going to look like. If control 1 is set to 63, that's what the wave is going to look like. And if control 1 is set to 127, that is what your wave is going to look like. And this is on page 18 of the manual if you want to look for yourself. And what control 2 will do for those is basically it's going to let the LFO control that for you. So let's just play that with our ears so you get an idea. So we're right now have a saw wave, and control 1 is dialed into 0, and the LFO is dialed to 0 too. So right now we're just getting a standard saw wave. All right, so let's go ahead and mess around with the wave a little bit with control 1 here, which will let us modify how the wave is, like I just showed you in the manual there. So not you know, you can hear a little bit of things going on, but what is cool is, yeah, you can sit there like a human monkey and move that around yourself, or we can be a 21st century man and let the computer do it for us with the LFO. So let's go ahead and let's let the LFO do the work for us. So you'll notice, even though I have I'm not moving this around and adjusting the wave. As soon as I let the LFO take over with this knob, you're going to hear it do it for me. And as I dial it up, I'm letting the LFO make more of an intensive change. Now it's still, maybe not as effective with, a saw wave. Let's try it with a triangle wave instead. Oh God, that's not nice. Let's go back to the saw wave. And we can also go to our LFO1 and change the wave that's used there to make that quite different. So you didn't hear much of a difference because what I'm doing here with LFO1 is messing around with its frequency, which is making basically the speed of it go crazy. So, like I said, you do need to jump around and work your wrists out with going through these menus to actually get them all playing nice together. You're not going to find everything you need under one menu. So once again, just to cover what we did there, is for the saw, the triangle, and I believe the Vox, was it? Yes, the Vox wave. Control 1 will let you modify the waveform by hand, and then Control 2 will let the LFO apply modulation to that waveform as specified by Control 1. So I think I screwed up a little bit there when we had Control 1 dialed down to 0. We weren't hearing much of anything happening at all. Still get a little bit, but it doesn't really start to get crazy till we start dialing in a bit with Control 1. So for those waves, you can use Control 1 and Control 2, and then the LFO1 settings to play around to dial in your waveform you want. Okay, so let's go ahead and set these back to 0 and 0 because we're going to get into the square wave, and they're all kind of similar. The only difference with the square wave is instead of controlling the sound, it's doing pulse wave modification. So, right, let's dial this into 0 and 0. They're typical square, but we can do manual pulse wave manipulation with dial 2 here. But it's not going to be really effective till we start taking advantage of the LFO to do the PWM for us. So once again, another thing you can play around with. The sine wave is interesting because I had to actually look this up because I was unsure what the heck cross modulation was, but I guess it's just kind of lingo for frequency modulation, or FM, on analog synth. It's very simple. Basically, you have it when you have a sine wave here, you can dial this in to control, what is it? Let me make sure I'm not screwing this up. It basically controls the depth of the cross modulation, and it will start using oscillator 2 to modify oscillator 1. And then so this allows you to control the depth of that cross modulation. You can see you get kind of that metallic-y FM sound, and then you can then add the LFO on top of that to mess around with that. I think our LFO was a little too fast. It sounds like a bit of a blender when I started adding it in there. But you get the idea, and maybe we'll play around that later, or you can do that at home. The Vox wave is the same as the others with just a wave modification. And then this one's actually pretty cool. Is the digital waveform generator system. So you can see we only have Control 2 available for this one, but it basically comes with a whole bunch of preset, like dirty kind of synthesized sounds for a whole bunch of different sound types, from organs to electric pianos to basses, guitars, and vocals. So let's just spin through them to get a feeling for what those sound like. And what's cool, especially with the multi-timbre, is you can come up with some cool sounds, or you can take these bass sounds, and maybe we'll try doing that now. We'll find one we like, and you can throw the filter against it, and an oscillator too against it, and do some fun things. So. Piano isn't going to sound too great. I kind of like that endless waveform it gives us. That's fun. We'll stick with that one. And then of course there's noise. So if you want some nice white noise, you know, you're doing a school play and you need that backdrop wind effect. Maybe adjust the volume envelope so it doesn't just drop off like that, and you can add some atmosphere to your school play. Okay. And then there's audio in, which I'm not going to get into, but on the back you can use audio inputs, and then you can just use the audio in as the sound source for oscillator 1. We're not going to do that. Let's go with that endless digital wave that's on there. That was fun. All right, we're over most of the hump. It's going to get easier from there. So I hope you're still hanging with me here, and we're getting there. Takes time to go through these things. I'm going as fast as I can, I promise. I don't want to go too fast and miss things. I don't want to go too slow and bore you either. Oscillator 2. We'll try to get through this as fast as we can. Oscillator 2, you have 3 options: saw wave, square wave, or triangle, which can be adjusted by this knob. It gets a little interesting here because you can either just have it as its own, and one thing you'll notice is you're not going to hear anything at first. So even though I'm setting a wave, you're not hearing any difference to our sound before. We'll try the modulation, so you can either add ring modulation, but you're not hearing anything, and I'll show you why in a second. And you can have sync, so it puts the 2 oscillators in sync. And ring sync. Now, why aren't we hearing anything? Well, this drove me nuts when I got this. I'm like, oscillator 2 does nothing. Well, you idiot. Not you, me. You have to control the volume. So under the mixer settings, we had the oscillator 1 level, which is maxed out at 127. And if you check our oscillator 2 level, it's at 0. So we got to scroll this way down to 0, and let's bring it up so it's even with oscillator 1 and see what happens now. Well, that's different. So let's go back. Let's reset it, everything to the default. We'll turn off the modulation. So now you're just hearing. So let's go to the mixer again, and let's turn off oscillator 1, and you'll just hear oscillator 2 now, which is, I believe we set it as a triangle. I'll dial back up oscillator 1 so I don't have to go back. Oscillator 2, saw wave it was. Okay, so let's try adding in the ring modification now. Kind of sounds cool. So you're hearing oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. Oscillator 2 is coming through with the ring modification. Oscillator still coming through as normal, I believe. The oscillator sync. Does that sound much different than with it off? ring sync. Sounds a little mean. I like it. What do I like better, the ring or the ring sync? I kind of like the ring sync. We're gonna go with that. Where are we? Oscillator 2, semitone is controlling it compared to oscillator 1. And then the tuning is independent of anything except oscillator 2. All right. Mixer. Very, very simple. We were in here before, but in the mixer, you control the level of oscillator 1, control the level of oscillator 2, and then the noise level. So if we want a bunch of noise on top of this, which you don't want, you can add in noise here. But that's handy, is if you want noise and use the other oscillators to do sounds on top of the noise. You maybe put some drums or some effects like that. You don't have to give up oscillator 1 to noise. You can also use noise coming in through here. One thing I didn't cover with using oscillator 1 with noise, it lets you use a filter cutoff and resonance through the oscillator 1 settings 1 and 2, where with noise you don't get that option. All right, going through this as fast as we can. We're getting there. We're through most of the stuff, trust me. We're onto the filter now, which is getting a bit easier. But use your ear, right? So, you know, you can hear we're only getting the low frequencies there. Now I'm going to sound smarter because I remember the word frequencies. 12's not quite as intense as the 24. There's our bandpass filter kind of in the middle that we can adjust to do what we want. And then the high pass is the opposite of the low pass. See how the low end is dropped off, or you're just getting that kind of high frequency, which I was calling sound earlier. And I don't know, I think it sounds better of a low pass filter on it. Maybe even the 24. Yeah, 24 is too much. We'll go with 12. And then what else? So that's your bass filter. Now what other settings do you have? You can use the cutoff on the filter. And it's a little confusing because this says resonance, but in this case, and maybe if I was designing this, I would have done this differently, is you got the filter, the type, which we were just doing, the cutoff under the resonance dial. And then under the attack dial here, you have the resonance. And what is this? This is the filter envelope intensity. So if it's dialed to 0, it's just going to be as is, but this will make the envelope on the filter impact it much more. This might be a good thing when we get to these patches to have an LFO play around with to get some cool sounds going on. What else? Does this one do anything? It does. So we're in the filter. We went through the filter type. We went through the cutoff. We went through the resonance. We went through the filter envelope intensity and filter key tracking. So let's see what happens here if we're here. Let's crank this up. It doesn't sound too drastically different when we shift through the octaves on the keys, right? Well, part of that is because the way we set our filter is probably cutting off a lot of those sound changes. So what the key tracking will do is if we dial it up a lot, depending on now when we go back up, it lets, depending where we are on our octave, the key tracking is going to adjust the filter to kind of give us a bit more of a, I think the word is range to play with, or at least changing octaves in the more simpler terms in my mind. Changing octaves is actually going to have much more of an effect if no key tracking's on. The filter's always staying the same regardless of what octave we're playing on. So you can play around the key tracking to get some more playability up and down the octaves with your sound is the way I like to look at it. All right, Filter envelope is pretty easy. You can do an attack, decay, release, sustain envelope like I showed you here. So you have two envelopes on this, one for the volume itself, and then you can also do one for the filter too. So if you want the filter to take some time to come in, put a bit of an attack on it. And then maybe you want it to the sustain level. What are we here? So we have filter envelope, attack, decay. So that's how long it takes. So think of the attack, how long it takes to ramp up to get to top volume. Think of the decay time, how long it takes from the attack volume to get down to the sustain level. And then the sustain is going to be how much of a difference that is. And then the release is when you let go. How long does it linger? Just like a bad fart. Sorry, it's not even funny. So you can do that for the filter, and how you can do that also for the volume. In this case, these the attack, decay, sustain, and release is done for the filter, and then you can do the exact same with those same knobs under the volume envelope or the amp envelope. And the only other things to do is you can also enable key tracking to affect those envelopes as well, just the same as I showed you for the filter. I won't go into that. You can play around with it yourself. Let's go into the amp. So we covered the envelopes because they're pretty simple. Well, you know, it's not rocket science. Amp. What do we got? The amp level. So this is the overall level of the sound. This is handy when you have multi-timbres. If you want one part of, if you want one to be quieter than two, you can adjust with the levels to get that mix right. In this case, we have only one timbre or one layer, so we don't have to worry about that too much. The pan pot. Basically, if you right now it's center, but if you want to blast out your left ear and you want to blast out your right ear, you want to be a little Pink Floyd on us and run. Sorry, that's funny. You can do that. Sustain. Where am I? Sorry, I'm getting silly. Tired. Distortion. So you can either enable or disable distortion. There's no way to control it from this menu. Oh God, yeah. I think we'll leave it off. Extreme distortion. All right, and then you can also enable keyboard tracking. Now, what the heck does the keyboard tracking do for the amp? I'm actually generally curious. Oh man, the volume. So if you crank it up, the volume will increase as you go up the octaves, and if you crank it down, it will decrease as you play above the C4 note. So there you go. That's what key tracking does in regards to the amp. All right, almost done this dial. Trust us, dial 2 is going to go so much faster. You're almost there, guys, and you probably know way more. This is what I wish somebody did for me when I bought this thing, because I would have saved myself some time, and I might have actually used this a bit more. When I bought it, I was hopelessly lost. Maybe I should have checked out some videos, but I just couldn't find anything. So I'm hoping this will help you, as if maybe you're me from a year ago. It will give you a little bit of help to get started with this bad boy. Or at least not get lost in this menu system too bad. So the LFOs, LFO 1 and 2 are both the exact same settings, so you can pick your LFO wave. And if you don't know what an LFO is, it's a low frequency oscillator, or what I like to think of it is letting the device or keyboard or computer in the device, or the wave that's being generated by circuitry, if it's actually a pure analog device or pure analog LFO, control knobs for me. So one, we have to specify how that wave is specified under LFO 1 and 2. So we have two LFOs. We have two LFOs at hand we can use here, and then under these patch ones we get into later, we can actually assign those LFOs to modify things, or like you saw under oscillator 1 settings, you can assign, like LFO 1 is used to modify control 2 under most of those oscillator 1 settings. So that's where these oscillators start to come in. So what can we actually do to adjust those LFOs? Well, we can change what type of wave type they are. So we have saw, we have, what is 59.1? I thought that was square, but let me just check. 59.1 is square 1. So you have two different square types. And let me just show you here, because this is a nice little chart in the manual on page 29. is there's all our waves we can set for the LFO. So maybe I'll just show you here. Saw, square 1, square 2, triangle, sine wave, and sample and hold. I had to look up what the hell is sample and hold? I think it's a random wave. From what I could tell, there's sample and hold circuits that kind of produce a random kind of wave. I'm probably getting that wrong, but as far as I know, for crafting an LFO, consider it a random wave. So let's hear. And you're not hearing any difference because I don't think we're using LFO on anything right now. So, and because remember, we picked a digital waveform and there was no LFO controls over that. So we will get into playing around with these a bit more when we get into these patch settings here. Okay, what are we dealing now? So each LFO has the wave, which I just showed you, and we also have key sync. So key sync is quite simple, just like what we saw before. Key sync can be off. Key sync can be on tin. What is tin? Tin stands for timbre. So basically, whenever you push a note on, it's going to reset the LFO wave, and we'll show that when we start playing around that. Or we can have Voc, which is voice. So every time you push a unique voice, or if you hold down this and then that, it's going to reset the LFO, or before, it's only going to reset it on the first key down. Tempo sync. So you see this light here flashing? That's the tempo we have currently going on. I'm not sure if you can see it. It doesn't look like it's showing up very well on the camera, but you can crank it up or you can crank it down. And basically you can control the tempo that's set on here, and that's going to sync the LFO to the tempo, or it's going to turn it off and you're going to run your own timing through the frequency knob that we played around with a little earlier, or you can set the LFO to be the timing of the wave to the frequency, and then from this menu here you can set the, I think it's a ratio of what is the actual proper terminology. So basically 1:1 is for every 4 beats will be an entire cycle of the wave, or 3, 4, what the heck? It should be 1, 2. Oh, I see. Oh, so sorry, I'm looking at the manual instead of the device. Silly Nick. You can see in page 29 here, it shows that 1:1 is 4 beats, 1:2 is 4 beats will be 2 cycles, 1:4 is 1 beat will be 1 cycle, and 1/8 will be 1 beat will be 2 cycles. So I guess beyond what they show in the manual, we can go a little bit beyond those settings and really make it crazy, or find different ratios. That's it. We made it through this whole dial. And it's going to get a lot easier now because this dial is a lot more simple. So patch 1 to 4, all the same. Don't worry about it. So let's take a look at patch 1. So you have 4 different patches, or like what I like to think of them as modulation paths you can set up. So you pick a source for the modulation. So you can pick, your source can be either the filter envelope, the amp, or the volume envelope, as I call it sometimes. LFO1, LFO2, the velocity, so how hard you push down the keys. What is Tri-C? That is keyboard tracking. Pitch bend, so this wheel, and then the mod wheel. So let's set something to velocity, because that's something I can easily demonstrate to you. So depending on how hard I push down the velocity, I can either say it can modify the pitch. So let's try that now. Why is nothing happening? Well, I also have to dial this mod intensity to adjust how much is actually going to modify the pitch. So that's one quick, easy demonstration. So we can modify the pitch. What is that? That is the tuning of oscillator 2. Hearing too much on that one. Oh, it's because I did dial the effect back down. Still not much on the oscillator 2. 1 is the tuning on oscillator 1, or the oscillator 1 control, which won't do anything because remember, we're using the digital waveform and there is no control on that. The noise level. So you can see it's velocity, how hard I push the key. I don't know if you'd want to do that. It doesn't sound good, but it might be interesting to see what happens with the cutoff on the filter. The velocity pickup on here is a little tricky with this keyboard, but you can see how that might be effective for the sound you're trying to create. Same for the amp. Quick way to control loudness with velocity right there. Pan, I'm not sure why you'd want to do this, but your left or right. That's kind of silly. And you can also affect the LFOs with the LFO2 frequency with the velocity. I don't think I'm using LFO2 for anything, but that would be one thing where you would set that with patch 1 and then go in patch 2 and say, hey, I'm going to use LFO2 as a source for something silly like maybe the cutoff. Remember to add some actual, what do they call it, the mod intensity, so it actually does something. Maybe you don't do that because it sounds like hot garbage, but you get the idea. So you have 4 of these patch settings available for you to modify and join together and match up as you like, and that's where you really get a lot of your own control over beyond what these menus give you to modify your sound. So that's patch 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is there anything else we missed? So we covered the source, we covered the destination, we covered the intensity, and that's it. And that's how you can really make your sound your own, or add a number of cool things with patches 1, 2, 3, and 4. Don't overlook them. Mod effects. Beyond, you have a couple of effects on this bad boy. I believe it's a flanger. Skip over here. Trust me, I know where it is after searching through the manual for a minute there, looking for those patch settings that were in the next page. So page 40 here, we have a flanger effect, we have an ensemble effect, and we have a phaser. Now, what happens? Well, all right, specify the LFO. So the mod, each of these mods, each of these effects has their own LFO assigned to them. Not LFO 1 or 2, and you can control the frequency of that LFO with this knob, but not making a difference because we actually have to add some depth to the effect, which is 0, which means the effect doesn't take place. Add it in. So that's the flanger. We have, let's see what the ensemble sounds like. The phaser. That little phaser sound. I kind of like the flanger. Like there. Okay, so that's it. That's all you can do in the mod effects section there. And where are we now? The delay. So there's a delay that comes with this guy. So there's 3 types of delay. There's a stereo delay, a cross delay, and a left-right delay. We'll give those all a try in a second. The tempo, so you can either sync it to the tempo, or you can have it sync it to the tempo, or have its own frequency or whatever. This is where you adjust the delay time, and then the depth. So let's go ahead and add some depth, so we'll get a bit of a delay. So that's the stereo delay. Let's try, oh no, I'm running out of batteries. All right, so hey, good for the tutorial. If you see that, save your settings immediately, or run and grab the friggin' AC adapter, because you're about to run out of batteries, and this sucks. is because you can't even write the friggin' sound over when that goes on. So let's see if I can beat the clock. Check out my camo PJs. Save the sound. Let me get back here and see if the camera's still shot. Oh, only the best things happen when you're trying to film content. Alright. Alright, we're back in business. Alright. So that was the delay. We were going to check out the different types of delay, weren't we? Before the battery decided to die. So that was stereo. Let's hear what the cross sounds like. Sounds like you kind of got a little whiplash back and forth between the left and right air. And then left-right delay. Let's hear what that sounds like. Much more left and right, back and forth. I kind of like the cross, just for my own taste there. And then yeah, the delay time and depth are controlled there. All right, back to business. We're almost there, guys. Equalizer, your simple EQ. You can control the low frequency, the low equalization gain, the high equalization frequency, and the high equalization gain. Just a quick way to adjust your... So you can kind of fine tune your sound after you go through everything else with the equalizer. And we are now at the arpeggiator. Is that correct? I looked up how to pronounce that. I'm not sure if I got it right. But we can take a look at the arpeggiator. I have a lot of trouble saying that. I don't know why. It's not the only word. It took me over 30 years to learn how to say pneumonia properly. I always used to call it phenomia. The previous owner of this house, I was like, I keep getting his mail. I tried to get it back to him. I went to my wife the other day. I'm like, man, is Georgie ever gonna get Yorgi ever gonna get his address fixed up? My wife just gives me a blank stare. It's like, what are you talking about? Yorgi, the guy who used to live here. He's like, you mean George? So I'm not sure. I struggle with my friggin' pronunciation all the time. So I'm trying hard, guys. I'm getting there. All right. What do we got going on here with the arpeggiator? All right. Tempo. So we can set... let's first turn the arpeggiator on. And let's go back to our amp, or volume or amp envelope, and let's drop the attack down a little bit. So we get actually a bit more of an effect on the arpeggiator. I'm just going to start calling it ARP again, because that's easier for me to say. All right, so we can crank the tempo around a bit here. I'm just going to drop for this demonstration the attack on the 0, and I'm actually going to get rid of our delay because I don't think it's working too, or maybe even just tone it down a little bit. Okay, seems to be a bit better. What are our settings? Tempo. So we covered that quick. The resolution, and I screwed this up when I did my key step tutorial. Is it's not 1/22? It's the basically what notes it's playing for the tempo. So basically, I can set it down to be quarter notes. 8 notes, 8-note triplets, 16th note, 16-note triplets. So that's how you can control, as it's called on here, the resolution. The gate is the note length, is like I like to think of it. How long the notes play for. And this is going to be the type, so either up, down, alternate, random. And, well, nothing's happening because I bet you we have no range. So the range is how many octaves it's going to go up, or down, or random, or whatnot. So that's alternate, up, down, another alternate one, random, or trigger. So what trigger does, let's just turn trigger up. What did I do? So let's just go to, a simple up. See how I pushed that note and nothing happened? Well, that's because I didn't have trigger enabled. So let's see what trigger does for it. So trigger, it's all the notes I'm holding down, so I gotta hold down a whole bunch and it will go through it. Which is not doing interesting. Sure, what trigger does. That's interesting. Anyway, the other ones are quite simple. Good time. So those are your options with this. So the ARP settings are based upon ARP A, ARP B. Sorry about that trigger thing. I'm not quite sure what that does. I might have to look that up after. Not an excellent explanation of that. Well, I'll try better for ARP B here. So this is the latch settings. You'll notice as soon as I let go, the ARP stops. If you set latch on, you can get kind of lazy. Let's turn the latch off so it'll actually shut up. I think I might have figured out what's going on. I don't think I have key tracking on, right? So let's just turn the ARP off for a sec. So that's why we're getting confused. Remember how I showed you that key tracking earlier, and where was it? That's what I struggle with sometimes. This menu is we got to find key tracking on here. There's a bunch of key tracking. But I think in regards, we want the key tracking on the filter. That really makes quite a difference. So filter key track, let's crank that up a little bit, and let's go back to our ARP1. Because I think what's happening is you're not hearing much of a difference between the octave ranges because key tracking is so low. It's not making much of a difference between going up the octaves. Let's turn our ARP back on. There we go. That's why I was getting confused. All right, let's get back to settings B. So I showed you the latch. So if you want to not have to hold it down to keep the ARP going, you enable the latch. What else do we have? The swing. So we can add some swing. You can add a little bit of swing to the arp. Key sync. What does key sync do here? Sets if the ARP will be synchronized to the keyboard. If it's on, the ARP will always start from the beginning of the pattern when you play the keyboard. If you're performing together with other instruments, you can use this function to ensure that the ARP pattern is aligned to the beginning of the measure. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that means, to be honest with you. Let's turn it on and see if we can tell. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's like how it triggers with the keyboard. That's another thing I'm not quite sure on. Last step. Well, this is easy. If you don't want to have to like turn these off yourself. Oh, you can make it less than the 8-note pattern with this guy. So right now it's 8, but you can see as I drop it down to 1, or I can have it just as a quick 3 thing. You can control how long the ARP notes are. Yeah, and that's about it. Yay, we made it through. All right, so now we've gone through the fun of going through all the menus. Let's actually make some sounds, some different types of sounds. So one of the weaknesses, I would say, of the synthesizer is this menu-driven system. You know, it's not a knob per function synthesizer, which means crafting sounds from scratch without having kind of a plan of what you're doing can be problematic with, you know, jumping around from oscillator 1, messing around with the patches and messing around your LFOs and the filters. You know, you're spinning all over the place. You're looking in here. So in this synthesizer may be better approached with having a general idea of the sound you want to make and some of the basic rules when it comes to those sounds. There's nothing stopping you from spinning all around there, but I'm thinking coming in with an actual idea of what you want to make may help you be more effective with this instrument. So saying that, there was a book I was reading. It was called How to Make Noise, and the one I bought was called Analog Synthesis. How to Make Noise, Analog Synthesis. It's from Simon Can. Hopefully that's how you pronounce his name. But after buying it, I also did some Googling, and there's actually basically a free PDF of how to make a noise. So if you Google that with Simon Can, check out the PDF because it's pretty much this whole book. If you want to throw them a couple bucks, check out the digital books, but you can get a free PDF as well, which will cover a lot of these things. So a lot of the notes I made in here are from his book on how to make some of these sounds. So for example, let's try to make a bass patch. So to do that, we can either do a saw or a square wave, he suggests. I'm not sure why I said 48 dB filter. It probably should be 24 for either bright or a thick kind of bass. Envelope for the loudness is we want a fast attack and a swift release. And we can play around with the filter frequency and or cutoff from the filter and the resonance to taste. And if we want to add some fatness to the sound, he suggests adding some extra oscillators at the same wave, maybe detuned by a semitone or not. So let's go ahead and play around with that now. So let's start with, once again, let's get the wave on. So we just have a basic patch here, I believe. Yeah. So let's go, let's try to do it a square wave. So they got that saw, where is square? So there's square. So what do we hear of now? Okay, square wave. Let's go to our filter. So we'll go to our filter menu here. And what is he suggesting? Let's see here. So we got 12 low pass filter on now. 12 dB low pass. What's a 24 dB low pass? Well, let's go with the 24. And the envelope. So let's go to our loudness envelope under the amp EQ section. He's saying a fast attack. So we're 0 right now. Let's maybe go with a 10. a bit of a attack there and a swift release. So where are we for release? I believe it is this guy here. What do we have? 0. So maybe we'll put that in with a 16 or something. Cool. All right. And cutoff frequency. So let's go back to our filter and let's play around with the cutoff frequency to maybe dial this in. So this is filter cutoff frequency. Perfect. So it's maxed out right now. And let's play around with the resonance. So not terrible. Sounds kind of fluty at the moment. All right. I do have a MIDI bass file ready to go here. How is that going to sound if we let it rip? Sounds better with the 12 dB. And maybe let's play around with the oscillator a little bit, because we just basically set it as a square. What if we add in a little bit of a pulse wave modification? Get that Nintendo sound. Let's go to our LFO1 that's actually doing the modification, seeing what we can do there. Got a triangle wave, which we probably want to use for pulse wave modification. So what are we doing here? This is the LFO1 key sync. I like it with it off. And now what are we doing here for LFO1? The tempo sync. We'll leave it off. But here's where our frequency was going to really make it crazy. So I can just leave it as is, because that's kind of a nice Nintendo-ish sound. Maybe we'll check out the pitch. Maybe we can pitch it down up. Let's see. Yeah, I like that. Tune it around a little bit. So that's fine. You could even go with that as a sound, but let's go with the extra. Let's add some fatness. So what is he suggesting for fatness? We can add oscillators, same wave, detuned, and try to push it off by a semitone or not with the tune. Okay, let's go to oscillator 2. Do we have square wave? We do. And we got a square wave there. What other options do we have for oscillator 2? That's the wave. That's the level of it. Pardon me, no, that's the modification, which we'll leave off because we don't want to do any modifications yet. We'll play with that in a sec. And what else do we have here? The noise level of, sorry. See, this is one thing. I wish I put lines in here, because when you go across, it's kind of easy to lose track of where you're at. So oscillator 2, this is the semitone. So he said detune it by 1 semitone. And of course we're not hearing anything yet because we gotta actually add some oscillator 2 to the mix. Oh, that doesn't sound too good, does it? So let's go back here. I don't like that. It sounds better when it's actually 2. Actually in. Maybe we can detune it a little bit. There we go. Just a slight detune seems to be a bit better. And see how it gets fatter? So that's what he's talking about there. Now, let's go in. Let's see if we can add another oscillator. So you're saying, oh, you only have 2 oscillators, and this is where I talked about the multi-layer and having different timbres. Let's go here to the voice and see if we can make it even fatter. If we don't like it, we don't have to stick with this, but we're going to make this a layer. So you can see, single, we have just our original sound, but with layer, we have multi-timbre, so we are adding a whole nother sound on top of this. Let's go into our new sound, and that's kind of cool even there. But let's see if we can even make this fatter. such a fat bass line. There you go. So you get the idea. Cool. We'll save it. What the hell. Let's see if it sounds better like that or just a single layer before we save it. No, I'm going to save it as a layer because I like both these sounds actually. And it's easy to switch back and forth between the two of them. Alright, so we'll save that. What the hell? Oh, write protect. Because I came back to this another day. Let's turn off write protect again. Let's try saving now. Okay. Cool. So there you go. Made a bass line. Bass sound. Alright, go away, MIDI track. Cool. What do we got in here? Oh, God. Alright, let's get rid of that. What should we try next, ladies and gents? Drums. So let's try to do a kick drum. We want a low pitch sine wave or triangle for our wave. No attack, fast decay, but not nothing, and no sustain. And we're supposed to play with the decay to taste. And maybe add a pitch envelope, same as above for the punch. Okay, and let's give that a go. All right, so we want to grab a sine wave. Let's get a sine wave in here. So back to oscillator 1. Find our sine wave. Okay, so no attack. Let's go to our volume envelope or the amp envelope. No attack. We're already there. Short decay. All right, so let's do a super short decay. We'll go around 10. And no sustain. So let's crank this full sustain down to 0. And I'm assuming no release too, so that's cool. That's what we got now. All right, you can see. Doesn't really sound like a kick, more of a snare kind of thing. Well, you know what? We probably have to pitch. We forgot to pitch down the wave, so let's pitch the wave down. All right. Let's pitch it all the way down. That sounds good. All right, now let's go back to our envelope. And let's keep on playing around with the decay till we get it where we like it. Ah, there we go. All right, and then if we want to add a little bit of a punch, it's saying use a pitch envelope the same as above for some punch. Okay, how the heck can we do that? Okay, so let's go to our patching here. Let's set our, so what do we got? Patch the source. We want the source to be our envelope, our volume envelope. So that's the frequency, or pardon me, the filter envelope. This is the amp envelope. So we're using that as our source, and we want to use this to screw up the pitch, which we got now. Let's hear what that sounds like. And remember, we got to add some actual intensity before it actually does anything. So no change here. And so you can see how you can kind of adjust that to your liking. And then now we got a Korg drum machine. So that's how you can do a kick. And then it's saying, so let's go ahead and save that. There's our kick. And you know, I'm not saving these under my proper assignments. Well, maybe when I'm doing my own thing, I'll do it, or I can copy and paste these later. Okay. We're just doing demos right now. All right. So it's saying, hey, use that sound, but for the snare, use the same thing, but pitch it a bit higher and use some noise. So let's try to do a snare using that same sound. So what we'll do is we wrote it into that one, but let's write it over into 3 here. So there's our bass. There's our kick. There's a copy of our kick, but saying, hey, pitch it a bit higher. So let's go to our pitch. Oh, pitch it up. Okay, maybe it's a bit too much pitched up. Drop it down a little bit. and saying use some noise. So let's go. We're already using oscillator 1 for noise, so I think we could either do a layer, but remember, under the mixer settings here, we can also add in noise. And there you go, simple snare. Save that in there. What's next? Let's do some closed hats. So it's saying use noise or a high tuned square wave, no attack, short decay, no sustain, and tune with the filter, 12 dB filter, and use some play around with the resonance to get it where you like. So let's do that. Go to 4 here, clear it out. Cool. All right. So let's go here. Let's set oscillator 1 to noise. You know what? Let's go to our mixer here. Let's just use the noise generator so I don't have to worry about doing anything. So I'm in the mixer. I'm cranking up some noise here. Beautiful sound. Let's go to our volume envelope now, and we want no attack, very short decay, and no sustain. Cool. And let's go to the filter. What are we using for our filter? I think we're set to 12 dB. Oh, where am I at? In the filter envelope, I want to go 12 dB. Cool. And where is the resonance? I believe it's this guy here. Yeah, so there's a closed hat. And then for open hats, so we'll save that. And I'll save it also into here, because for an open hat, you can use the exact same thing, except you just extend the decay on the volume envelope. So attack, decay, so let's open up the decay. Cool, so right. So now we have a little drum kit on here now. Very simple. So if you don't have a drum machine and you just have a microKORG, well, make your microKORG your drum machine. All right, we can do claps, but I think that's enough drums. Let's try bells. So what we want, and this will work much better on an FM synth, but we can try to do it with an analog synth. Maybe we could even take advantage of the sine ability to do the modifier of having oscillator 2 modify oscillator 1, but you know what, we'll try doing it the analog style. So we need to do a triangle wave of a high octave. It's suggesting a sharp attack and a swift decay. Maybe try another wave on top of that, double the octave on it and detune, send it through the low pass filter with high resonance, and you can also do some effects on it. We don't have a chorus on this machine, but we could probably do an echo effect with the delay. So let's give that a go. I haven't done this yet, so let's give it a try. All right. So, okay, I'll get rid of that lovely sound. Okay. Bells, triangle wave. Where are we here? Oscillator 1, triangle wave. High octave, so let's pitch it up. Not getting much volume there, but we'll see what's going on there in a sec. What the heck? Okay. Sharp attack, swift decay. Back to our amp envelope. So sharp attack, swift decay. Okay. Not hearing anything, so let's go to our mixer here. And maybe, send through the low pass filter. All right, so let's go with high resonance. So let's maybe go to our filter, see if our filter is going to help us out with that issue we got right now. So let's crank the resonance on this. still trying to put this bell sound. Sounds more like a flute than anything right now. Let me go back maybe to the pitch and drop the octave a little bit. Maybe I got it pitched up too much. Yeah, that sounds better. Still too fluty. I wonder if there should be no sustain on this. Let's go to the amp. What's our sustain? It's maxed out. What is it? Sounds still kind of fluty. All right, so let's try another triangle wave through oscillator 2. And double the octave. All right. Mix that in. It's not perfect. Let's put maybe some delay on that, see if it helps jazz it up a little bit. Yeah, so I'm not even going to bother saving that because I don't love it, but maybe with some other effects, some reverb and a chorus on it would sound a bit better, but I think I'll stick to FM since for any bell sounds I need. All right, I tried. I think the drum and bass were much more successful than that. But here, let's try something else. Let's try a piano sound, which is going to be a square plus a sawtooth wave put together. Basically, we want for the envelope release and an attack to taste, but with a high sustain. Use a 12 dB filter with no resonance and very low cutoff. And for the filter envelope, much lower sustain and longer release than our volume, or in this case what we call it here, the amp envelope. So let's give that a go. Cool. All right, piano. Let's clear this out. Oh, where are we here? Oh. What am I doing? Don't want to write over my beautiful drum sounds, do we? Oh, whoops. I think I killed our snare. Oh well. Rest in peace, snare. There we go. Piano. So square wave. Oscillator 1. Square. Oscillator 2. We want to be a sawtooth. Can we make it saw? Yes, perfect. And we want more level on the sawtooth than what we want on the square. So we'll put the square to be half. Doesn't sound great yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. The envelope, the amp envelope, we want basically release and attack to taste. So put a bit of attack on it to start with, and a bit of release, ADSR, and we want very high sustain. This is our sustain here, or no, it's our decay. So we'll leave the decay as is, and the sustain is maxed out. So sounds like a harp right now, but let's go to the filter. And yep. And what's our resonance? No resonance. And low cutoff, which is maxed out right now. Okay. And what do we want on the filter? Let's go to the filter envelope. And much lower sustain, ADS. So longer release. Okay. ADSR. Doesn't really sound like a piano. I guess you can kind of... I don't think that sustain should be on there. So let's go to the loudness envelope. Let's drop the sustain down. That's the release. Sustain. ADS. Play the attack and release. Yeah, you get the idea. It's not a great piano, but you could probably take that and mess around a bit with other effects to do some cool stuff with that. Yeah, you know. So I think that's probably enough. Maybe we'll do a couple more. We have an organ here. So for the organ, no filter, 3 sine waves, fast attack, max sustain, no release, play around with the pitching of the oscillators, tone, slowly bring up the levels of oscillator 2 and 3 to get the right tone, and play around with the pitches. So let's give it a chance. Basic, and add distortion. So this is going to be a bit more involved. So let's clear this out. Let's see what we can do. All right. So 3 sine wave oscillators. Oscillator 1. Sine, please. Oscillator 2. Oh, okay. So this is going to be difficult because we don't have... The max we could do is 2 sines on this one. So let's see if we can make it work. We're going to have to make it a multi-layer. Let's get both those sines involved. So we'll go layer 2 and set its oscillator to sine 2. So we got 2 sine wave oscillators. All right. Fast attack, max sustain, no release. So let's go. I think if I hold this down, yeah. So in this case, I want to modify both of the timbres at the same time. I just hold this down until they both light up, and now I'm modifying both timbres exactly the same. So they're both set to sine, but I want to adjust the amp envelope. So I want a fast attack. I want max sustain ADS. All right, that's already dialed in with no release. Perfect. ADSR. Perfect. Tune the pitch. All right. And let's make sure there's no filter going on right now. Filter. What are our filter settings? So if we want no filter, type, cutoff, resonance, intensity. Let's just dial everything down to 0. That's probably not going to work. Maybe on the envelope, I can just have... Yeah, I'm not sure how I disabled the filter on this thing. Or it's even going to make a difference. It's going to make a bit of a difference. Yeah, I'll just turn the intensity way down, so hopefully that will make it the filter. Basically, filter envelope intensity all the way down make the filter actually do nothing versus it having normal. There's a little bit of difference. We'll do that. That's what I'm going to do to try to eliminate the filter from playing around here. Okay, we'll go with that. All right, we don't have another sine oscillator is the problem, but maybe I can get around it by using a modifier on oscillator 2 to maybe make a weird kind of organ sound. So we'll use a saw and maybe, what's that do? I gotta actually give oscillator 2 some volume to see if it's doing anything. Yeah, not really, eh? No. At least not with the ring. What about the sync? Yeah, what about a different wave? Square? Yeah. So we're hurting with not being able to add more than 2 sine waves, I think, a little bit. But hey, we'll see if we can get around that. So now the next thing we need to do is try messing around with the pitch. So I'm gonna take it off of multi edit mode, and I'm just gonna mess around with some of the pitching of these oscillators. Maybe let's add some LFOs to put some detuning in here. So we'll take advantage of LFO1 to detune pitch. It's just the frequency of LFO1. And we'll add it to the other timbre. Do the same thing. So where we pitch 1, LFO1. Mess around with the pitch, please. Add some intensity. Adjust the frequency to taste. And finally, we'll add a little bit of a distortion for fun. Where's the distortion setting? It is under the amp setting. So we'll go amp, distortion under this guy on. There you go. An interesting organ. I don't know if I love it or hate it. I may need to play around on that later. And then, yeah, leads are to taste. Basically, you can do a square or sawtooth, add some high-pass filter on it, then do a low-pass filter. In this case, you only have one filter available for you, so maybe you do that through the equalization and add distortion and use velocity as maybe a modulation source for the distortion, and set the mod wheel to do something so you can play at the sound while you play it for leads. I'm not going to bother doing that. I think this video is going to be long enough, and I've given you a good idea of some of the sounds you can make and how you can do it. And I think it really helps you to come with this synthesizer with a plan of attack like this for making sounds. Just how much of a pain in the ass going through all the menus is. It's not so bad if you actually come in with a plan of attack like this. So maybe if you're experienced and you know how to build your own sounds, build a little cookbook like this. Or if you're not so experienced, Google around how to do sounds on analog synthesizers, or check out that PDF book I mentioned. It has a whole bunch of examples like this in it that you could try yourself. And then the nice thing is, once you dial in something like that, it's a lot more fun when you have that bass sound baked in to then go through the menus when you know what you're doing to modify it. This is already probably almost an hour and a half long, so I'm going to cut it off there. So hopefully that helps. I think it should. And so I don't know if this is a great beginner synthesizer. I think it's a bit of a honey trap, right? Because there's so many of these available used, and you can get it for $300, at least around me, and it's well worth the $300. But it wasn't well worth the $300 for me a year ago, because I was just lost with this damn thing. So I hope maybe if you're feeling lost with this will make you feel a little bit less unlost and be able to take advantage of it, because it's a powerful machine. It's a nice synthesizer. It's just it's difficult for sound building from scratch. But I think if you come in with a plan of attack like I just showed you, to figure out, okay, this is the sound I'm trying to make. These are the bases of that sound, and the kids are going crazy again. So I usually film these at night, but I'm taking advantage of my lunch break today because I want to get this done. Yeah, you got it. So I'll let you go. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions or want to see anything else, I'll try to get to the vocoder at some point. I'm kind of glad I didn't, considering how long it took me to walk through all this. I tried to go as fast as I can, but I didn't want to skip anything. And that's what I got for you. So enjoy. And like I said, hit me up below if you want me to go into anything in more details or if you have any questions. And once again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all later.